So how is it possible to have three seemingly identical ships and yet have each one going further than the last one? It all comes down to the scientific theory of have as little rocket as humanly possible. So how does that work? How can we possibly get more delta V, get further with the same amount of fuel and engines? There's two different kinds of staging that can accomplish this. If you're wondering why there's a giant dick in my save files, you should go check out my shorts if you haven't already. Let's get to the very first, which is no staging. What we have here is a rocket with all of these tanks are going to burn at the same rate. All of our fuel is going to come out of our bottom engines here. And to test this out, what I'm going to do for each one of these three different stages of rockets is I'm going to launch them straight up, and we're just going to find out how fast they're going. So let's do that to begin here. You can see that all of the fuel tanks are burning at the same rate, all 5 of them. And that's to be expected. They're all going to run out at the same time, and that's going to be the most thrust that we could have put out, and we're going to find out how far that takes us. All right, so now we are at 2,500 meters per second. So now that we have our control, what we want to do is check out the second kind of staging that we have, onion staging. Onion staging is a little bit better than no staging, and how this works is we're going to take a fuel line, and we're going to put a fuel line from the outer tank to the center tank from every single outer tank. You can see them all here, all flowing into the center tank. As the fuel finishes in the center tank, it's going to be replenished from these outer tanks, which means that these outer tanks are fueling both the engine below them and the engine in the center core. By the time that these outer cores are finished, the center core will be entirely filled still, and we'll be able to drop off these outer cores, giving us one full center core to go with. Let's see that now, see how far it goes. So as we can see this time, all of the fuel in the outer boosters, the outer fuel tanks emptied first. Now we're going to let go of those tanks. You can see them all leave. And now just the center core remains with a full tank. Alright, so the Methalox is running out of the fuel tank, we're running out, and it looks like we're finishing at, we'll call it 3,800 meters per second. So sure enough, this time our orbit goes right out of the sphere of influence of Kerbin and out way past Dres. So last thing is we need to check out the last kind of staging on the list, which is something called asparagus staging. Asparagus staging is even more complex, and this can be done with many more tanks than just this, but in this one it's just a simple test. We're just going to do it the 4 outer tanks, keep everything the same. The major difference here is the fuel lines are going to be not running straight in from the outer tank all the way around. Everything is the same other than our fuel lines. So you'll see now our fuel lines run from one outer tank to another, and then in. From one outer tank to another, and then in. So what that means is that as all of these 5 engines are running, we're going to have our fuel flowing from the outermost tank in our line of fuel injections, if that's the right word for it or whatever, but this outer tank is going to finish first. We're going to be able to drop those 2 by themselves when they finish, and then the next 2 when they finish, and then we're on to just the center core, giving us a ton more reach. Okay, there's the first ones. We're gonna let those ones go. Got to keep on top of it with this one, because if you let it continue to burn while those tanks are empty, you're not getting anything extra out of that weight. And it's actually not helping you at all. So you got to make sure you're dropping these tanks as they finish. So now that we have those first 2 gone, we're waiting to get the second 2 gone as well. You can watch the Methalox drain in the bottom right here. And here we go with the second ones. There we go. We're treated to a beautiful sunrise here as we are on the last quarter of our tank. Okay, so as it finishes up, we're at 4150. And as far as our orbit, we'll go take a look, although this doesn't matter quite as much. It's a lot more to do with positioning, but we can see before it was just outside of Dres. Now we're almost hitting the orbit of Jool. So again, just kind of to get an idea of how much further you're getting with these kind of different changes in staging. And the differences in speed that we got from the different kinds of staging was 2,400 meters per second with no staging, 3,800 meters per second with the onion staging, and 4,100 meters per second with the asparagus staging. So the biggest jump comes from just going from nothing to onion. That's a big deal. But you get that little extra oomph from going to asparagus. However, I have definitely a feeling the more outer boosters you add, or the more outer tanks you add, the more of a difference you're going to get between onion and asparagus. If you're new to KSP2, I hope this helped you in some way, and if you're a veteran, then it might just be fun to see the actual numbers on this. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider subscribing. See you later.